My never I say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there. I see them yopo.
I think the first thing to note is that there were 7 judges who sat on the matter, and 5 of them agreed that this ruling was in the best interest of the effort to promote democracy, based on the understanding of the Constitution. But then it is significant that 2 Supreme Court judges disagreed with the 5, also based on the understanding of the Constitution. The decision was not unanimous. So that's a very important matter. Now, me, as a layperson, have gone through the Constitution. In fact, this morning I've also glanced through the relevant portions of the Constitution. And I haven't found anything in the Constitution which says that the principle of delegation of power is undemocratic. There's nothing in the Constitution which says so. But we are told that the law has its substance and its spirit. So it is possible that persons who are advocating in such matters may not look at the text, but may look at the spirit of the law and come to conclusions. So the fact that I have not found in black and white a text which supports the decision of the Supreme Court does not mean that the Supreme Court is wrong. Again, there's a principle which is known in law as the purposive interpretation of law, which says that in adjudicating cases and so on, judges must go beyond the written text and look at the impact of their decisions on society. So I would not fault this judgment simply on account of the fact that I haven't seen any black and white text in the Constitution which supports the Supreme Court judgment. I would not fault it. However, I am aware of some facts. All of us do know that the CDD has, through empirical means, been trying to find out how much it actually costs for elected officials to gain their positions. And the last report I saw suggested that for anybody to go through the processes and become a presidential candidate, he needs a minimum of $200 million. I mean, that's mind-boggling. That's crazy. That's complete madness. That devalues, the essence of constitutionalism and so on. $200 million to be elected as president of the Republic. That's frightening. And these practices, which involve huge expenditures and so on, deform our democratic practice. No doubt, they deform it. It means that persons who may not be able to raise as much as $200 million would never become president of Ghana, even if they are the best brains and have the best of intentions for the country. And I go back in history and I say, look, when Kwesi Nkrumah emerged on the Ghanaian political scene in 1948, if he had been asked to cough up even $50,000, could he have done it? No. So politics could have prevented Ghana from getting such a distinguished leader as Kwesi Nkrumah, because he couldn't marshal these resources and so on. So it is important to do something about the incursions, of money into a political arena. It's absolutely important to do something about it. But the next question that I would ask is, how does this ruling stop that? And I don't see how you can stop it. Because I do know that in the general elections, money still plays a role. Okay, in the general election where all of us Ghanaians in our millions vote, money still plays a role. So this judgment is not going to stop monetics in our politics. Indeed, if you look at recent Ghanaian electoral history, you would find that on a few occasions that we know, there could be more, persons who have won elections are drug barons, people engage in romance, scam, and so on. You know, and we know how they won the elections. I mean, there's one particular guy who was reported to have bought cloth for virtually almost everybody in the constituency. You know, people who use their own money to build hospitals and schools and pave roads and so on. All of that is politics. And this judgment is not going to be able to stop that. In this judgment, trying to find a description for it, maybe we could just say that it's a pie in the sky. It doesn't address any of the issues at all. It doesn't. The other question that we need to ask is that this judgment appears to frown on representation and delegation of powers. It appears to do so. Okay? What is the validity of such an attitude? How can you frown on delegation of powers and representation? Because you see, if you go to Parliament, the 275 of them there, 276, yeah, if you add, yeah, the 276 of them who sit in Parliament operate on the same principles as elected delegates electing candidates. We are all not there. It's only 276 people who are there, and they are our delegates. And they take decisions on our behalf as delegates. So if you accept that principle, which leads to 276 people sitting in Parliament to take decisions on our behalf as delegates, how do you then negate the principle of selecting delegates in order to choose candidates for an election? In any case, what happens in Parliament and what happens in party congresses and so on, which one has the gravest impact on national life? So I'm completely lost. You understand? I'm completely lost. Look at the president. Look at the enormous powers that the president has. Appointing ministers, appointing ambassadors, taking decisions about the nation's wealth, who should have it, who should not have it, and so on. The president exercises delegated authority. You understand? When he decides who should own gold fields, he doesn't come to the 35 million of us. He takes the decision on his own. It's delegated authority. Even the Supreme Court judges, the power they exercise is delegated. They exercise those powers in the name of the Republic. They are exercising a sovereign power. The sovereign power of more than 35 million people. That's what they are exercising. Okay? Because all of us cannot go and sit in the Supreme Court. You can't have a bench which will contain 35 million people to judge, to decide whether or not who to me is guilty or not. So we delegate our powers to them. You understand? So the delegation of powers cannot be undermined. It is in modern society, which has populations in the millions and so on, delegation of powers is accepted, should not be frowned upon, and so on. So I'm not so sure that this decision serves any democratic ends. I'm not sure. Because the delegation of power is not undemocratic. If it were, you would not have a president. If it were, you would not have members of parliament. If it were, you wouldn't even have a Supreme Court. So I'm not so sure that the attempt to frown on the delegation of powers is necessarily democratic and promotes democratic ends. I'm not sure. You understand? Now, because all of us agree that the monetization of politics is inimical to national development and undermines the democratic ethos of society and so on, we need to find ways of dealing with that. Now, how do you deal with that? One of the ways that I would propose is to tackle poverty. Poverty is one of the reasons why people sell their votes, you know. In 1996, I was involved in political campaigning. I went to a place and a woman came to me and said I should give her those days some peanuts. You know, she wanted something like 3 cedis in today's value, you know, for herself and her 2 children so they could vote for me. First of all, there was no guarantee that if they took the money, they would actually vote for me. You know. But I asked them, why? Why are you selling 4 years of your future for this amount? And they said, well, the amount may sound small, but at least they will get something. Because in the past they had voted for people and they got absolutely nothing out of it. You know, sensible, rational, and so on. So poverty is one of the reasons. I mean, if you put people in a condition where 100 cedis begins to mean a lot more for them than 4 years of their lives, you will get this situation. So we need to fight poverty. Okay. In addition to fighting poverty, we need to embark upon massive political and ideological education so that citizens begin to see their own civic responsibility in voting. And if citizens recognize their civic responsibility in voting, they will not be selling their votes for 100 cedis. If citizens position themselves in the context of a class struggle, where classes are engaged in struggle for the control of resources, the means of production, the means of distribution, and so on, it will become exceedingly difficult for citizens to be taking 100 cedis for their votes. If people began realizing that their destiny, the destiny of their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren depended on the votes they cast, they would not be selling it for 100 cedis. But this tax is difficult. It is easy to get 5 Supreme Court judges to say no. You know, adopt universal adult suffrage, you know, or whatever in parties' processes for selecting leaders and so on. Very easy. They sit down, they look at the Constitution, they find reasons for that. Very easy. The difficult task is getting citizens to wake up to their responsibility to themselves, to their future, and future of people in their communities. But that is the only way of fighting the intrusion of money into our politics. Now, it's important to also emphasize that the intrusion of money into our politics is also largely responsible for the so-called corruption that is everywhere. If you need $200 million to become president, when you become president and you want to go for the next election, you want to go for a second term, your first day in office, you begin to think about how you can raise that amount of money to enable you to retain your position. I haven't seen many ministers who want to be sacked. I haven't. I haven't seen many ministers who want to be sacked. Because that seat is very comfortable. Very, very comfortable. You understand? So as soon as they sit in the seat, they begin to think about how to consolidate their position and so on. And this has led to a lot of the massive corruption that we see around. So, look at these public officers. There is no public officer who, at a sitting, can eat 200 balls of kinky. They eat the same number of kinky that we all eat. So why do they need so much money? There's no public officer who is able to sleep in 10 rooms at the same time. There's no public officer who is able to drive 20 cars at the same time, and so on. Okay? So, why this drive, hunger for money, for resources, and so on? A lot of it is to maintain the privileged position and so on. And I think these are the important things that we should tackle. You know.
Right, so let's turn our attention to another, legal matters. This time around, still at the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court of Ghana has upheld the OSP's prosecutorial powers. So yesterday, the Supreme Court ruled that the Office of the Special Prosecutor has prosecutorial powers under the Constitution, but affirmed that the Attorney General retains the constitutional authority to discontinue any prosecution initiated by the OSP through a nolle prosequi. In a unanimous decision, the 7-member panel, presided over by Chief Justice Paul Bafo Bonin, held that Section 4.2 of the Office of the Special Prosecutors Act 2017, Act 959, is not inconsistent with the 1992 Constitution. I still want to go back to Alaji for some understanding.
Alaji, what does this mean? Even this thing that you have read, saying that the Attorney General retains the power of nolle prosequi, has never been in doubt. No one has ever said that Attorney General doesn't hold. Because that agency, that Special Prosecutor's Office, is a specialized agency of the Attorney General's office. No one has, in fact, in drafting the law, or in considering it, only one condition was added to the exercise of nolle prosequi. Because we are fighting corruption, if the Attorney General wants to exercise the power of nolle prosequi, he must give reasons. That was the only thing that was added. That was the only thing. He gives reasons so that we know that it is in the overriding interest of states to discontinue the case. So that people cannot say that the Attorney General having entered nolle prosequi is frustrating the work of the special. It's in the law. It's in Act 959. So the Supreme Court did not add anything new. It's there. It's there. And anybody who cares to read it should go back and read it. It's there. I have said consistently, you see, we can't fight corruption with our hands tied behind us. It must be aggressive. It must be purposeful. It must be intentional. And it must be deliberate. In his concluding remarks of why people are sitting in office or not wanting to leave or not wanting to sack, why do they want to continue to be there? Because of the resources. Why? We all know that people who occupy political offices or public offices are paid. We also know that their lifestyles are not supported by their remunerations. We all know. The question is, where does the extra income come from? None of it. And we are all at them. That corruption shifts resources from development to personal aggrandizement. We all know that. So people can have 10 cars when they can only ride one car at a time. Aggrandizement. They have, somebody can even say that I have 230 houses when he sleeps in only one. Why he has 230 houses? Aggrandizement. Where has the money come from to acquire the 230 houses? If you ask that question, you are sinning against God. Or you are put in public office And in the next 3 months, you are acquiring property at East Legon, the most prime area of this country. Then we can ask where you got the money from. Now, if we can ask, that's why we should establish and support an office like the Office of the Special Prosecutor. I'm not saying that in all his deals, he's gotten it right. But at least I saw how it worked in Malaysia. People forget about the Action People's Party, or is it PAC?
Action People's Party.
The Singapore Party. Now, they won elections. There was a government in place. They promised the people that if they came in, they were going to fight corruption. And when they won, the first time they went into Congress, they all wore white like a wedding. Lee Kuan Yew told all his people, all of us signed the agreement that no one will be corrupt. And we are going to establish a special prosecutor's office. If you are found to have corrupted yourself in the execution of your work, don't come to me. I can protect you because it's a covenant. So once a minister was being pursued by the special prosecutor, he ran to Lee Kuan Yew. He said, the special prosecutor is harassing me. He said, have you forgotten the covenant? Go and face him. If he doesn't offer you fair opportunity to defend yourself, then we can come in. We can all complain. But if he offers you fair opportunity, then you have a duty to explain to him how you got those resources. The minister left his office and went and committed suicide. Because he could not explain. He knew he could not. But he was seeking what I've called lately political insurance against prosecution. Another minister ran away to Malta and stayed there for 30-something years. But finally returned and stood and faced prosecution. But today, Singapore has moved from a country that was said to be unsustainable by the British and packed off and left to almost a first-class country today. So that's why I said I'm happy that, and then let me read so you see, even the Attorney General retaining his was not part of the relief sorts. The reliefs were up to H actually. The first relief was a declaration that prosecutorial authority in Ghana is vested in the Attorney General and cannot be exercised independently of or in parallel with the Attorney General. Parliament recognized that. That's what they said. It's a specialized agency of the Attorney General. So the court said, yes, it's true. Because Article 88 was not amended. A declaration that Act 595 is unconstitutional to the extent that it confers original, autonomous, or insulated prosecutorial authority on the OSP. The court said, no, you are wrong. You are wrong. The OSP has autonomous prosecutorial authority. He said, declaration that Section 3.3 of the M4, which you just read, of Act 595 are unconstitutional because they make the OSP independent of the Attorney General in prosecutions. The court said, you are wrong. The OSP is autonomous of the Attorney General in prosecutions. A declaration that Parliament lacked authority to create a prosecutorial authority, a prosecutorial body independent of independent of the Attorney General with a constitutional amendment. The court said, no, we don't agree with you. Dismiss that declaration. A declaration that Parliament acted ultra vires in enacting Act 595. The court said, no, we don't agree with you. Parliament acted within its powers. A declaration that any delegation of prosecutorial authority under Act 595 lapses when a new Attorney General assumes office unless reauthorized. The court said, no, you are wrong. that authorization is perpetual until the act is amended. Orders striking down or severing the provisions of Act 595 that confers autonomous prosecutorial authority on the OSP or insulate it from the Attorney General. The court said, we don't agree with you. Your declaration, your relief is dismissed. We don't agree. H. Any further order or orders, or directions the court considers just, equitable, and necessary. The court said, yes, we agree with you, and we are going to make those orders. So, the Supreme Court exercise its consequential jurisdiction to A. Set aside the High Court's decision in the Archibald Hyde case as void. You know the Archibald Hyde case, when he went and said that OSP's decision is unconstitutional. Preserve and validate all investigations, prosecutions, and other actions lawfully undertaken by the OSP before the High Court's decision, thereby ensuring that the proceedings remain legally effective. So these are, do you see nolle prosequi in that? So people who are reporting this one, they're trying to find some victory for Noah. No, nolle prosequi was already in the act. Only fetter to the exercise of nolle prosequi was give us reasons, because we are fighting corruption. We don't want to send a political prisoner, not prisoner, a political appointee to court, and you say that you are exercising your power of nolle prosequi.
Well, that has been the beef of why people will always object to this nolle prosequating, right? Because of the seeming political interventions in such matters.
The problem has always been the seeming politicization. I mean, people have always had a suspicion. First of all, there has always been a fundamental fear of the office of the OSP. Then comes the issue of the suspicion of politicization. These are the two things that have haunted the office of the special prosecutor. And from the very beginning, when the office was established under former President Akufo-Addo, even from within his own government and party, there were those who were vehemently against it for fear. Also, part of that fear stemmed from the personality of the office of the special prosecutor in those days. Here was a man who had built a reputation as a no-nonsense, fearless man. And people were terrified that if such a person is holding this office, they were not comfortable. So the office has had these problems from that time ever since. Martin Amidu left and Ajamin came in. He too suffered issues. They say he has a relationship with somebody, he doesn't have a relationship with somebody else. Somebody leaves the country, somebody who is supposed to be investigated leaves the country, he's being blamed personally, he's been accused. All these suspicions and fears have been so rife over the office of the special prosecutor. I think this judgment has, to a very large extent, tried to allay and give the special prosecutor the free hand, and also to give some faith in the electorate and populace that indeed that office as set up will be able to function, the way it was intended. So I think that at the end of the day, this court ruling has set everything clearly, and we are waiting for the further, orders that are going to come to give more clarity, in the hope that it will make things even easier, and also restore some confidence that yes, all the work that has been done in the past still remains legal and valid, and all cases that are being prosecuted would continue in their lawful trajectory. So I think
that's part of the ruling, that
yes,
it's still
yes.
going to stay that way.
Right. And that was also a very essential, because the ruling of the High Court suggested, especially to many of us who are lay, that there was a problem, there was a possibility that all the previous, will be declared void, So I think it has set everything clear, and it's good.
Right.
Yeah.
Comrade Pratt.
Master, you see, I'm listening to the judgment, I'm reading the judgment and so on. What really does it amount to? This is just legal gymnastics. Much ado about nothing. What is the decision of the court? The decision of the court is that, oh, the OSP has powers to prosecute, but the Attorney General can stop him.
On good reason. Yeah. That's it.
That's the decision of the court.
At least.
Whatever it is, the Attorney General can stop him. So the power to prosecute is still vested in the Attorney General. OSP still only acts as an agency of the Attorney General's office. Finish. That's gymnastics, jumping over ourselves. So, bottom line, OSP doesn't have original powers to prosecute.
Yeah.
The Constitution, 1992 Constitution, is upheld.
Yes.
That's all.
That's all.
Oh, makes it very simple.
Yeah,
That's very
that's it.
simple. That's all.
But that's
All
what we
the
have
rest is
always said.
gymnastics.
That's what we have always said. That's what the law was taken to do. I mean, even the parliamentary debates, we said that you could not give OSP independent prosecutorial powers. Is there in the parliamentary debates?
If he has independent prosecutorial powers, how can the Attorney General stop his prosecution?
We said that.
It's very clear.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
We said that we are only giving him operational independence, but the Attorney General can stop him.
Oh, very simple then. Makes life simple. Makes life very simple. Very simple. All right. So that's why they are called the Supreme Court. Right. Okay. So let's do our messages and then we'll be done for today. And I want to start off messages on Facebook. DJ Opidimora Felix. He says Ghanaians voted for NDC government to make the country better place and to intimidate Ghanaians who give their power to the I don't get the import of this. Musa Batwa says, I respectfully disagree with abolishing the delegate system. The Supreme Court must clearly define who qualifies as a genuine party member to prevent people from joining multiple parties and manipulating internal elections. Without clear rules, this could create chaos and undermine our democracy. My regards to Dr. Mubafo. Thank you so much, Musa Batwa, for that. Alasan Hamdan says, all right. He's also writing about the delegate. Say, how will the cancellation of the delegate system reduce corruption or monetization in our politics? It will rather make things worse. One, it will deny some constituencies from getting a better representation. How? This is the time we are going to see mafia money, cocaine money, Sakawa money, and serious money laundering because politicians now have to spend double of what they were spending before they can win an elections. I think I quite agree with that. The delegate system was used to elect Dr. Bawumia. Now that the Supreme Court has given the political parties 1 year to amend their constitution, is the NDC going to do theirs using the amended constitution? Okay, that's a question. Still Waters writes, he says, you don't know who qualifies as a genuine party member. Should it be those who are card-bearing members and have a record to have voted for the party multiple times in various elections, internal or national? So what is the difficulty in identifying genuine members? All right. David Labi says, so Kwesi Pratt is very right, but my fear is how to prevent infiltrators from rival parties. All right, so those are messages on Facebook. Let's do WhatsApp and then we'll be done. Akpaliok Daniel from Sandema, he says the ruling of the Supreme Court abolishing the delegate system for electing parliamentary and presidential candidates is a step in the right direction. In my view, it will give the entire party membership the opportunity to actively participate in choosing their representatives, thereby deepening internal democracy and enhancing inclusiveness. However, I remain unconvinced that a decision alone will eliminate vote buying. Daniel Akpalio, thank you so much for that. Stephen Stephen from Kwabenya, he says the Supreme Court, seeing they could not do anything about Article 88 in the Constitution, they decided that the AG can discontinue any case the OSP is handling. So what has changed? All right, Mystic Wonder Avoko inside in Sawam Adwajiri. He says Wuntumi should rather apologize to Ghanaians and not President Mahama, because his Galamsey activities is a sin against humanity. Ghana will work again under the tried and tested President John Mahama. Thank you, Mystic, for that message as well. Asanko from Santa Maria, he says, in my opinion, there should be a law to criminalize the buying of votes.
There's already a law like that.
There is? Oh, okay. So I'm told there's a law, right, to criminalize vote buying. If you go and do that, you can be arrested. Good morning, Efo David. Okay. I always admire your maturity in moderation. All right. Okay. So thank you for that. It says it was a wise decision by the station. All right. Okay. The Supreme Court decision on the delegate system is on point, but it is now left with the parties to practicalize it without or devoid of human maneuverings. My regards to senior brother Kwesi Pratt. Tell him Mr. Amuzu, formerly of Kotobabi.
Debi kama mamena PENDREAM TV ase. Now so far so good. Say open online portal e wo Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.